All right, so you know that press release you sent over about a potential hemophilia A breakthrough?
Yeah.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah,
Why are people so excited about this?
Okay, so first things first.
Oh,
What even is hemophilia A?
right, because before we can talk about a cure, we have to know what it is.
Exactly.
So hemophilia A 101.
It's a genetic bleeding disorder,
Okay.
and it's more common than you might think.
Really? How common are we talking?
It affects about 1 in 5,000 male births.
Wow. That's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, and basically what happens is their blood doesn't clot properly
Okay.
because they're missing this key ingredient, a protein called Factor VIII.
Factor A.
Yep, so no Factor VIII, big problem.
Okay, but how big of a problem are we talking?
Think of it this way. Imagine you get a cut and it just won't stop bleeding.
Oh, gosh.
Now imagine that happening internally in your joints, your muscles.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be incredibly painful, debilitating, and even life-threatening.
So it's not just an inconvenience, it's a serious condition. And I'm guessing treatment isn't exactly easy.
You're right.
What's involved?
The standard treatment involves regular injections of Factor VIII.
So they have to inject themselves.
Yep, sometimes multiple times a week.
Wow.
And not just for a little while, for their entire lives.
That's a huge burden.
It is. And on top of that, the average cost per year can be anywhere from $200,000 to $850,000.
No way.
Yeah, that's like the cost of a new car every year.
Just to manage this condition.
Exactly.
Wow, no wonder there's so much hope for a cure.
It would be life-changing.
And that's where gene therapy comes in.
Right.
But wait, I thought there were already gene therapies out there.
There are.
So what makes this new one, this ET3, so special?
It's all about the delivery system.
Okay.
Think of it like a tiny microscopic package
Okay.
that carries the instructions to make Factor VIII.
So it's like delivering the recipe right to the cells.
Exactly. Now, the older therapies use something called an AAV vector,
AV vector.
but it had issues with durability, and some people's immune systems even blocked it.
So their bodies rejected it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not ideal.
Definitely not the perfect package.
So this ET3 uses a different type of vector.
Exactly. This one uses a lentiviral vector.
A lentiviral vector, and that's better.
That's like a super efficient delivery system.
Okay.
It gets that Factor VIII gene exactly where it needs to go,
I see.
and it makes sure it stays there.
And when you say stays there, you mean
Potentially forever.
forever.
Potentially, yeah, that's the key difference, the possibility of a permanent solution.
Okay, now things are getting interesting.
Right.
So let's talk about this phase 1 trial. The one mentioned in the press release.
Yeah?
Where was this research done?
At Christian Medical College in India.
Interesting. So they took a group of people with severe hemophilia A and what did they actually do to them?
It's pretty wild, actually. They
Yeah.
took the patient's own stem cells,
Okay.
modified them with that lentiviral vector carrying the Factor VIII gene. Okay.
And then put those modified cells back into the patients.
So instead of constantly injecting Factor VIII, they're giving their bodies the tools to make it themselves.
Exactly.
Genius. Okay, and tell me about these brave volunteers.
5 men, all with severe hemophilia A.
Yeah, okay.
They were aged between 22 and 41.
And before the therapy, I imagine they were dealing with a lot of bleeding issues.
Constant bleeding episodes, yeah.
So they were definitely in need of a solution.
They were.
So what happened after the gene therapy?
The results were remarkable.
Did it work?
All 5 participants saw their Factor VIII levels go from undetectable to normal, healthy levels.
Wow.
And get this, during the follow-up period, which ranged from 9 to 27 months,
Okay.
not a single one of them had a spontaneous bleed.
Wait, are you serious?
I am.
That's incredible.
I know, it's like their bodies finally learned how to clot properly.
Hold on a second. I need to pick my jaw up off the floor. That's insane.
Right.
Part of me wants to jump up and shout, Eureka! But I know it's still early.
This was just 5 people, right?
Right.
Is that really enough to get this excited?
It's important to stay grounded. We definitely need larger, longer-term studies to confirm these results and assess the long-term safety and efficacy.
Right, of course. But still, these initial findings are pretty amazing.
They are, and that's why everyone's talking about it.
Okay, so we've talked about the science, the potential, but what about safety? Were there any red flags?
Yeah, that's always the big question, right? With any new therapy.
Right.
The good news is,
Oh, wait.
besides some expected side effects, like low blood cell counts, nothing serious.
It's a pretty typical stuff.
Yeah, and temporary too. And here's a big one.
Okay.
None of the participants developed inhibitors to Factor VIII.
Inhibitors. What does that mean?
It means their bodies didn't reject the treatment.
Oh, okay, so their bodies accepted the new Factor VIII.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, really promising.
But what about long-term effects? I mean, this is gene therapy. We're talking about changing someone's DNA, right?
Yeah, right. And that's why long-term monitoring is so important.
Okay.
Researchers are going to be following these participants for years.
To make sure there are no unexpected consequences.
Exactly. But, if this therapy really works the way it seems to,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about a treatment, we're talking about a cure.
A cure for hemophilia A.
A one-and-done solution
Wow.
for a lifelong condition.
That's huge. I mean, the implications of that are massive.
They are.
It's not just about individuals. It's about society as a whole.
It's about everything.
Let's talk about that for a second. What happens after a cure?
Well, on an individual level, it would mean freedom.
Freedom from
From the constant fear of bleeds.
Right.
No more restrictions on what they can do.
so many things that people with hemophilia can't do.
Right, like contact sports.
Yeah.
Even just riding a bike.
It's a whole life they're missing out on.
Exactly. A cure could open up all those possibilities.
Give them back their life.
And not just their lives, but think about the financial impact.
Right, we talked about how expensive the current treatments are.
A cure could save healthcare systems a fortune.
And not just healthcare systems, but the families, too.
The families, the caregivers, everyone.
It's a ripple effect.
Exactly.
Okay, so lots of potential benefits.
Mhm.
But you mentioned challenges, too. What are those?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is access.
Access to the cure.
Yeah. What if this therapy ends up being really expensive?
Oh, right. Not everyone will be able to afford it.
Exactly. Will it only be available to the wealthy?
Or what about access in different parts of the world
Right. Will it be available in developing countries?
with limited healthcare resources?
Exactly.
So even if we develop this amazing cure, there's no guarantee everyone will benefit.
That's a challenge.
It's not just about the science. It's about the logistics, the economics, the ethics.
It's about everything.
There's a lot to consider.
There is.
And we haven't even talked about the psychological impact.
Right.
What about the people who have lived with hemophilia their whole lives?
How do they adjust to a life without it?
It's a big adjustment.
It is. Imagine building your whole identity around managing this condition.
And then suddenly it's gone. I
Exactly.
imagine there would be a lot of mixed emotions,
Absolutely. Joy, relief, but also maybe some confusion, some loss,
like grieving for the life they knew.
even if it was a difficult life.
And what about their families?
The parents, the siblings, everyone who's been a part of their journey, it's a huge shift for them too.
Wow, we started with a press release about a potential cure, and now we're talking about the future of humanity.
It's all connected.
Okay, so before we go too far down the rabbit hole,
Right.
let's bring it back to our listener.
Okay.
That press release
Uh-huh.
about a potential cure for hemophilia.
Where do we stand?
Are we on the verge of a medical revolution?
The science is incredibly promising.
Okay.
And these early results give us a lot of hope,
Wow.
but we need more research,
Of course.
larger trials, longer follow-up.
To make sure it's really safe and effective. So no champagne corks popping just yet.
Not yet.
But there's definitely a sense of optimism in the air.
Absolutely.
This could be a new chapter.
For people with hemophilia A,
And for all of us,
as we navigate the future of healthcare,
a future where we can cure lifelong conditions.
it's a future full of possibilities and challenges.
So what do you say? Ready to dive into some of those bigger questions?
Let's do it.
So we know this potential cure could mean a whole new world of ethical and societal questions.
Yeah, it's not just about the science anymore.
Exactly. What are some of the biggest challenges we might face, assuming this therapy really takes off?
Well, access is a big one.
We talked about this a little before.
Yeah, but it's worth repeating. What if this therapy is super effective, but also crazy expensive?
Oh, right. Will it only be available to the wealthy?
That's the question.
A cure only for the rich?
It's a real concern.
What about people in other parts of the world?
Yeah, will it be available in developing countries?
Places with limited healthcare infrastructure.
Ex-
It's not just about developing the cure. It's about getting it to the people who need it,
And that's not always easy.
especially when you're talking about a global scale.
Right?
So much to think about.
There is.
Okay, let's shift gears for a second. We talked about the psychological impact earlier,
Yeah.
but I want to dig a little deeper.
Okay.
Imagine living your whole life with this condition,
Yeah.
and then suddenly it's gone.
It would be a huge adjustment.
Like losing a part of yourself.
In a way, yeah.
And what about the families?
Yeah.
The parents who've spent years caring for a child with hemophilia A. How do they adjust?
It's a huge shift for everyone involved.
And not necessarily a bad one, but definitely something to think about.
Right. We need to be prepared to support people through that transition.
Okay, so we've got access issues, psychological impacts, anything else?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we need to start having these conversations now.
Before it's too late.
Exactly. We can't wait until this therapy is on the market to start thinking about these things.
So what can our listeners do? What can we do to be part of this conversation?
Talk about it.
Spread awareness.
Yeah. Let people know that this research is happening, talk about the potential benefits, but also the challenges.
And get involved.
Exactly. Support organizations that are working to address healthcare disparities, advocate for policies that prioritize equitable access.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has.
We started with a press release about a potential cure, and now we're talking about the future of healthcare.
It's amazing how it all connects.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
It is. There's so much more to explore.
So to our listener,
Yeah.
stay curious, stay informed.
And stay engaged.
This is a conversation that affects us all.
It does.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.